Welcome to Prepare Now. This is John. This is episode 3 of the Beginner Prepper Guide on how to, from start to finish, begin being self-reliant. This episode focuses on taking knowledge, gear, and goals to make a plan to integrate into your normal lifestyle. Remember, this is a lifestyle, not your life. That should be overwhelming. It shouldn't take up all your time, your resources, or money, and constrict your normal day-to-day life. It can become very overwhelming, though, at times, and it shouldn't. So I'm trying to help with these couple steps and techniques to make sure that it doesn't happen. Please follow along, and if you have any questions, please put them down below in the comment section, and I will get back to you ASAP. First, today we're going to start about how many calories a normal male and female will need to survive. For a 30-year-old male and female, I'm just going with 30 years old, a male being 180 pounds, 6 foot, female 165 pounds, 5'6", is what I'm using as reference. For the male, to maintain weight, you need 2,658 calories a day. For the female, 2,176 calories per day. On average, the minimum amount of water a person can survive, and this is being sedentary, is 1 gallon. But mainly, most people discuss this, you should at least have 2 gallons per person per day. So I've kind of broken this down, as you can see in the chart, for 72 hours, 1 week, and 1 month. You can see day to day. If you look at the chart below, you'll see that the minimum for a 30-year-old male to survive calorie-wise is 1,500 calories. For a 30-year-old female, it's 1,200 calories. Again, going with 1 gallon per day is the starting, and hopefully you can move up from there. For 72 hours, you'll see that we're sitting anywhere from between about 7,000 to 6,000 to maintain weight, depending on sex. And minimums between 4,500 to 3,600 calories. 1 week, we're getting into the teens, with a male 18,000 and change, and 15,000 and change for a female. A little bit less, just to survive, will be about 10,000 calories and about 9,000 calories for a female. And then when you hit that 1 month mark, we really get into the calorie count. For male, it's 82,398 calories to maintain your body weight of what I stated above, and just to survive would be 46,500 calories. And of course, 31 gallons of water with 1 gallon a day. A female would be 67,456 calories for 1 month, and minimum would need 37,200. Basically, all this is telling you is when you're going to shop and look for things that, whether it be Mountain House or freeze-dried canned goods or you name it, you look at the calories in the back. And a big tip is to see the dollar per calorie that you're getting, because some things are more calorie rich and dense and some are not. And you also need to look at the macronutrients to make sure, because we're not going to be eating probably well and having it as much variety in our diet, so that needs to be taking place also. But by having a calorie number, you know how much approximately you need to be taking in every day. You can look at it, you can ration easily with that. And this is, again, just for 30-year-old males. Average weight for male 180 pounds, 6 foot, female 165 pounds, 5'6". Next slide describes on average calories for just some normal foods that you might see people purchase. A common staple for a prepper would be white rice, not brown rice. Brown rice has fat in it, makes it taste a little better, but it kills its store longevity. So you want white long green rice for 10 pounds, which I think anywhere between $5-6. You're getting almost 6,000 calories. So it's actually pretty good, especially it can last very easily for 30 years. Oats, about 10 pounds, you're looking at 18,000 approximately calories. Dry macaroni pasta, 10 pounds, is another 17,000 calories. Now, this kind of brings it back to what your normal diet is. One egg, however you want to cook it, it's only 78 calories. An ear of corn, 77 calories. So when you're planning things, make sure you look up calories and know how much you're going to get in the end, because that's just as essential as the planting and the harvesting. Fats are very essential because they add a different type of energy. A stick of butter right now, it goes for about 810 calories. The more healthier the milk and the products used to make that butter, that usually the higher the calorie content, but actually it's cleaner to actually intake. Next, we're going to describe what's important for us to be really focusing on in our preparations. Food, of course, will be canned, freeze-dried. If you can, if you want to start looking at things freeze-dried, usually you get about anywhere from 10 years to 30 years. Canned, you're looking anywhere from 1 to 5 years. Pastas, grains, and rice, there's many sites out there to tell you the ages. Water, the best thing is, I like to think of multiple sources. So I would have a source that you can get from, like a lake, river, pond that you can filter. Have fresh water that you can immediately go to if something happens. So maybe like 20-ounce water bottles. And then have a large amount of water, either in 5-gallon bucket, 5-gallon containers, 1-gallon containers, or even those big 50-gallon containers that you don't need to purify, something you can use to, when things really go bad, have time to filter it to go to. Next would be shelter. This could be your house, it could be a tent, a tarp. In most circumstances, unless the hazard can cause more issues with you staying, most people will be bugging in, because that's where all your preparations are. Tents and tarps are nice to have, because also not only do they provide shelter if you have to leave the location, but can be used to make clothing, to fix holes, you name it. It can be different things. Next would be fire and fire making, go hand in hand. Something we don't normally do nowadays because we have central AC and whatnot. But knowing how to make fire is essential, especially if you have to bug out, or even at home. Putting a fire up in the backyard with precautions due to security can keep flies away during the day. So if you're working in the backyard and you make a smoky fire, and there's many ways to use fire, including like cleaning water and whatnot. Next would be a water filter. Now, the water filter, I'm looking anywhere from a small Sawyer filter that you can get for $20 all the way up to Berkey ones that you're looking at $300 plus. Those, I would look at the gallons that you get out of each filter and then go back to that guide and see where you want to start with. Are you starting with a family of 4, wanting to do a month's supply? Then you're probably going to be going for the Berkey, spending some more money. If you're looking for something more just to get you over that 7-day hump, you could get away with something smaller. Remember, you pay for what you get, so it's better to cry once than to cry multiple times. Warmth is something, especially if you live in warmer climates, you forget, but clothing and heat sources, things that are extremely durable. Normal clothing today is almost made to be, after a certain amount of time, thrown away. So look for mountain hiking and outdoor clothes. It's going to cost a little bit more. A lot of times people buy, including myself, used. Next under that would be knowledge, like first aid, self-defense, outdoor. These things you can usually take online now. It used to be very hard to find classes, but thanks to YouTube, Masterclass, other activities, you can take these online courses and learn how to use what's on your first aid kit. Learn how to begin self-defense and know what to do when certain circumstances come up. Know how to build a makeshift shelter in outdoors. On that same note, be medical. Make sure you have a good first aid kit. You want something that is more than what you'll see at a normal pharmacy, those little itty bitty ones, and below a field hospital. So I have many different first aid kit reviews coming out. The best one is going to be able to treat traumas, scrapes, burns, cuts, normal stuff that you would normally go to urgent care for, but in this circumstance you wouldn't be able to. Below that, communication is essential. So a good FM, AM, NOAA radio, even if you can splurge, go to shortwave or ham if you have your license. That will allow you to pick up multiple more channels, give you more information on how circumstances are going on, and also it allows your brain to kind of not be as stressed out because you're getting more knowledge about the situation. Walkie-talkies are excellent. They're cheap and a great way to give out to your family. A lot of people say, well, I'm going to be at home, so why do I need them? The fact is, if someone's downstairs working and someone's upstairs and they see someone coming across the front yard, you're not going to be screaming because that person's going to know that your person's not there. So it's much easier to have a walkie-talkie, change channels daily, whatnot. Next would be a pocket knife, axe, and gardening tools. These are more things that you would be using, sometimes daily or specific times, but are very hard to make themselves out of everyday tools, and especially like pocket knives and gardening tools. They're essential. There's so many different things you can do with them. The final would be like zip ties, duct tape, and trash bags. The MacGyver stuff, as I call it. There's so many things you can do with zip ties, duct tape, and trash bags can be basically turned into anything. These things, make sure you don't skimp on them. Get the zip ties that are thermal radiated, that can take a good temperature. They're a bit thicker. Duct tape, go for something that's stronger, like your Gorilla Tape, you name it. Don't go to the dollar store and get cheap stuff. You buy cheap, you're going to get cheap. Trash bags, go to Home Depot, get the construction grade versions. You want to look at how on the bottom of the label it says how many mLs. That's how thick the actual plastic is. A lot of them will be only like 1 point something. You want something much higher, as high as you can find. The next section is the not important items. You've probably been bombarded, if you've started this journey, with thousands and thousands of items that are constantly popping up on your screen that you must purchase, or you will die an uncircumcision death very soon. The first one on my list I thought was quite funny is a gentleman had made a tsunami survival pod for only $8,000. Now, I did get to see it, and you may survive the tsunami, but now you're inside a big cue ball bouncing on the ocean with probably not a ton of people coming to rescue you. So I'd probably stay away from that right now unless you that really want that bad. Survival vests, I think, are kind of a joke. They looks like you are coming to have everything wrapped around you. The more you can integrate things, the more likely you understand that, like a multi-tool, a knife, security, or something that you don't need to carry everything on you at once. Just more ways to lose things. Anything that says 12-in-1 or 9-in-1 survival, anything, just stay away unless it has Leatherman or something like that, Leatherman tool, because it's just usually very poorly made. I'd rather have one thing that's made specifically for cutting down a tree than one thing that does all these things but very, very crappy than one that does it excellently. Next, some people are into self-contained breathing apparatus, the same things a fireman would wear in case there is a hazmat event or smoke, you name it. Those go for about $3,000, then you get including tanks, compressors, you name it. So definitely stay away from that. There's just no need for that. Hazmat suits is something that got in a high ticket item, especially with COVID. People were buying hazmat suits that were made for anthrax and some other fun chemicals when they could basically get away with wearing a mask and a trash bag. Hazmat suits are made professionally to be able to go into some extreme environments, be deconned, and be able to get out under tested circumstances. That's why they cost so much. The cheapest you can get probably would be a basic like paint one you'd see at Home Depot, all the way up into the thousands. Next, you'll see some those 6-month survival kits. Some of the fun ones I've seen are like 6-month survival tabs. Now they do make these little tabs that are not too bad. They're survival ones, but they're made for more like maybe 12 hours worth of nutrition. I don't know how a person could stay sane on 6 months of eating tabs. I would be throwing them around. It would be really bad. This is kind of a play on COVID. You do not need piles and piles of toilet paper. As you know, most people know by now, you don't need 5 years of toilet paper. You can actually get away with using old cloths and wipe yourself and just clean it in bleach water. I know it's gross, but it's much better than having to bury tons and tons of toilet paper. And toilet paper is not cheap to start with. So I can only imagine some of these people that have tons of toilet paper hidden everywhere in their house. But again, that's just more of a choice that I think is quite comical. Multi-tool survival shovels, that goes back into the multi things. You can't be the best at everything in a multi-tool like that. There is some tools like a Leatherman tool, or that have spent, I'd say, almost probably millions of dollars in R&D to come up with a tool that can still work at a decent level. But even like if you use a Leatherman tool, those pliers are not going to be as good as just a set of pliers that you got from the hardware store. That knife, you probably could find a better pocket knife to do its job. So again, whenever you get into multi-tools, that are usually not made of good equipment or quality of metals, usually made from overseas companies. So I would suggest staying away from anything that's something in one, or anything that's a multi-tool other than something like a Gerber or a Leatherman hand little plier tools. So my next is about the books. So most people don't have books nowadays. They either have Kindles, they have smartphones, they have everything downloaded, and they're like, I'm totally cool. I got a full survival library on my laptop, my phone. I can look it all up. Well, that's great if the grid's up, if everything's going great. Most of these survival things, if you get them on the phones, the apps, they're far from what you really need. And if you talk to any true survivalist that really knows their stuff, they have a whole library of books. Books, really, there's still nothing that can replace something hard and solid that you can put your hands on that is not going to be affected by anything electronic. So I've went through and picked out some of my favorites that I have. Bushcraft 101, really good about teaching outdoors. Prepper's Long-Term Survival Guide is basically more of a key off, getting past the first couple goals of like 1 week, 1 month, and to prepare more for your certain circumstances. As being a paramedic, I really like the medicine side, so Survival Medicine Handbook is a good one. Survival Wisdom and Know-How is an excellent book. I can't say it enough. It actually, it's almost like an encyclopedia, but it's written extremely well by multiple authors. You can get it really cheap on eBay. Edible wild plants is something you definitely would want to keep in your repertoire, simply because if you want to go eat a mushroom, you don't want to be eating something that's about to kill you. Next is, these are the two series that I would say are almost essential in any library, is Where There Is No Doctor and Where There Is No Dentist. This is broken down in such a great way that you don't think about those things until you really need them, and then you're in a panic, and they've made it so you can use those almost as a practical guide to get through situations. Next would be How to Stay Alive in the Woods. This is more of a play in case you need to bug out or go into locations where there's just vegetation, there's no urbanization and whatnot. Next would be the Prepper's Blueprint, which is kind of an all-in-one. Has some really nice ideas and hints in them. The Country Wisdom and Know-How is another version of it's a survival wisdom and know-how book. They come in a series. I got a hold of them, and those things I would not trade for hardly anything. And then, of course, the No Dentist book. So again, these are just top 10. I know people have other books that they think are much better, and again, this is just my opinion. Take a look at them. Most of these can be found very cheaply on eBay. I would never go and buy these books new. You're going to get ripped off, usually in price-wise. I'd go look for secondhand on eBay, usually coming out of Goodwill stores and stuff like that. Next one is discussing financial preparations. We kind of forget about financial side, and I have to throw this in. I'm not a financial advisor or trying to give you financial advice. With that being said, we forget that financial preparations are just as important as all the other things that are going on. We still have to live. And till at least I'm talking to you right now, we still need money and or something to trade to get something else. So just like most Americans, we go to work to get money, to give that money as options or choices to trade with someone else to receive a product. I see a lot of preppers and a lot of people are trying to go self-reliant, racking up credit cards and taking out loans to get items that may or may not be needed at that time, or may be just more spurged because of fear. Fear can be a very strong motivator and cause people to go and do things, especially like purchase things that they normally don't would do, i.e. toilet paper that get out on social media. There's going to be no more toilet paper, and people were spending hundreds of dollars on toilet paper, and they're like, great. So I've kind of came up with this little saying, never overspend for possible future when a problem present here and now is not being taken care of. So make sure everything in your house is in order as much as possible. You can prepare for the future and work on your own house, just like budgeting. Work with whether you're single, the family, put it as a budget line item, and this is how much we're going to spend, and then separate it out. That's the best way I've seen and talked to people about. So you don't get overdone, because it's so easy to see these new products like, I want that brand new generator, or I want that new RV, or that bug out vehicle, or that new $3,000 self-defense weapon. I mean, it can be very expensive very quick, and all you end up is, this is I'm going to use when this happens, when there might be things at home like you need to pay a medical bill, you need to get repairs done on your car. They're much more pressing. So this next section is talking about the micro-environmental preparations. And basically this is, these next couple slides you'll see are pictures. It breaks down from home to community to region to country. And each one has its own little quirks. You've got to look at everything very objectively and without emotion. And so I've kind of put little things to look for each location. Like home, adjust preparations to your own specific home and location. Where you're located, the water sources, you name it, geography, whether you're in the mountains, whether you're in the swamps, structure of your building, is it made of concrete, is it made of wood, is it a mobile home, is it an RV, is it a tent? Water supply and electric supply, how reliable are these? Are you out in the boonies and that your electric gets cut off all the time? Are you in the urban setting where it's underground? And then, of course, number of members of family, whether they have special medical conditions and other issues that need to be taken care of, and how many people there are, how many kids there are. It all goes into what your preparations are. Next will be your community. You need to take a look at the population density. They always have charts of where the highest population densities helps you with your OPSEC, knowing where security issues may come from. You need to know about your weather in your community. Certain communities have certain things, like, let's say up at the northeast, you have lake effect snow. I mean, these would be weather events that affect the community. You're near a river, maybe have flooding. Moving on to like characteristics of that community, be also that water sources, lakes, rivers, streams, places where you can source water when your urban water source is no more. Social economic regions. So what I'm saying is, there are areas that have a lower social economic, places that probably have more crime, sadly, or will be more in need than others. This allows you to more understand crime and make sure that if you're needing to get somewhere, where to avoid, so you have less possible confrontations. All this can be pulled up. Most cities and places will do that, if not law enforcement agencies. Local places in your area that specialize in special items, plumbing stores, electrical stores, gardening stores, tractor supply, all these places, the things that you're not going to get at Walmart, but you may need them down the road. It's good to know where they are and where they're located, so you can send people to go to that location to get something if something happens, whatever. Major roads. This is a big thing. You should have printouts of maps. I know this is a joke to this day because we all have Google Maps on our phone and we all have GPS in our cars, and no one ever has a paper map. Well, I'm telling you right now, when people special forces go over, they have all that GPS crap, but they also have paper map backups. And one thing you should have is a area of just let's say 10-mile around your normal home location of all the side streets and major streets and whatnot. What this will allow you to do is, so if you have, let's say, a family and we're trying to meet back up in certain areas, you can determine and tell them, hey, you're going to take this road. So if something happens, you can go back that road and know that this is their way of travel. It's much easier to show them that than trying to pull some screen up that may not work, or electricity, whatever. Ways to get around other than roads. This is something that a lot of people kind of forget. Specific back paths, walking paths and stuff like that. They are things that during natural disasters kind of get forgot about because no one's out for an evening stroll. So another big thing is railroad tracks. People really don't pay attention to a train unless it's sitting right in front of them and blocking them from getting home. But they do make maps of how railroad tracks go through your neighborhood. And if you think about this, is a nonstop fairway that you could literally walk the tracks, be away from major roads, and get to your locations because there's bridges, it's cut, it's cleared, there's no having to go through vegetation. And most likely, most people will not think of that because they see trains more of as just like a background noise, a nuisance, and I'm talking about mainly big cross-country trains, not necessarily subterranean trains or commuter trains. Next, we're going to talk about the macro view of environmental preparations. So your region. When I say your region, for maybe the Midwest, I want to look at population densities in cities and crime locales and which is worse. I want to know the laws that directly affect preparations. Sometimes certain areas they want to control. Let's say California, they don't want you to keep your rainwaters in certain areas. They think that that's theirs. So it's good to know the laws of that area before you especially make an investment, whether it be solar or you name it. Local hazards would fall into, is there gangs in the area? Is there certain things that we need to be aware of before things happen? Weather related to that region. So in the Midwest, we get pretty much all 4 seasons. And, tornadoes, thunderstorms, you name it. We don't get hurricanes. We don't get usually earthquakes, but once every thousands of years. And so you go by percentages, what's going to affect you most likely. And with us, most likely it'll be a natural weather device. Not device, but event. So with you, if you're living on the East Coast, you need to put in hurricanes. You need to put in other things, maybe a tsunami. So that definitely needs to be written down and documented. Also need to find safe areas, and I say this is safe areas, not safe spaces, because I know that people are probably smiling when they're hearing this right now, but think about locations, whether it be a city park or places that people would normally not go if there's an emergency going on, that it would say you have your your sisters across town, your kids over here, where can you meet up that's equally in the same distance, that you know that there's places to A, take shelter, B, be safe, and places that they can stay for a little bit and most likely not be affected by people in transit, or they're even there. So city parks are great, natural natural areas that the city puts up, whether it be like little lakes and ponds and stuff, are great for places just to meet up and then go back and to a certain location. Next is your country, where you live in the world. That's a big fish to fry. So you need to have a good basic understanding of current politic issues. Now, I'm not talking about who's currently elected and what they're running for, but I'm talking about your current stances, what your government stances on different politics, and just have a general good idea of what your country is, where it's leaning, whether it's a socialist, communist, dictatorship. And again, you try to be very objective. It's very easy to get emotionally attached to certain topic matters. So be very objective to this and just look at it as someone studying it and not thinking of your own political views. Next will be national weather events, whether it be hurricanes, blizzards, typhoons, monsoon seasons, because I'm talking to people also that might be in India or might be in Bangladesh, you name it. Next would be laws of self-defense. So if you live in Canada, you're kind of SOL right now. So it's very good before you start buying guns or doing stuff that that, hey, you're going to be going to jail if you get caught with this. No laws about energy. There's certain places that if you disconnect yourself completely from the grid, that's a big no-no. Firearms in general right now is a hot topic issue that definitely needs to be, what you can and can't do with security devices. And then, what government emergency powers does each branch have? Some places, their constitutions give them a mass amount of power over the populace, to the point that they could pretty much jail you indefinitely without trial in certain parts of the world if there's a national disaster and they feel that you're stopping the helpfulness to get help to these people. So it's good to know what kind of things those emergency powers give to their government. Next would be weather. Weather is something that's very not glamorous, so it's kind of forgetting about where we got so used to just looking at our phones and seeing live radar, which is immaculate if you think about just 50 years ago. But it's something that we still have in our DNA as being animals, honestly. You should be able, wherever you live, know your seasons, know when things come in, when like monsoon seasons or rainy seasons come in, when does snow usually hit, and have calendars and stuff like that. That should be basic knowledge, and if you don't know those dates roughly, I would definitely have this written down, certain things. So again, references are essential in disaster situations. Next will be things that probably most people have maybe been told once in a while, but probably forgot. Things like animals sit down when weather's coming. So you ever been out during a thunderstorm, you'll see the cows that were just up grazing all sitting down, usually in the area that's protected, all cuddled up. And it's not just, they know, it's subconscious for them to do these activities. Also, you'll hear all the birds. If they were singing, they're not dead quiet. You can't find any of them. Any small, squirrels that used to be playing in your back deck are now gone. And you can just see this in a normal thunderstorm. You can even go to the point that you're looking at actual vegetation, like pine cones. Pine cone shapes, the little parts were open and shut whether the humidity is too high or if there's rain coming in. They can actually sense that and change their shapes. A lot of plants do that. So these are just a couple hints. These things I would definitely look up, especially for your area. You have to look at your geography and animals and stuff like that, but it's something very interesting and something that could give you a lot of information when maybe information that our normal route of going on Google or something else is not available. and it'll give you that one step ahead. Hey, I can see that halo around the moon tonight, so there is a high chance of rain the next day because that's humidity. So knowing these things can really help you predict things coming in the future. They're not absolute, but they're definitely something better than just sticking your finger up and saying, yep, there's wind. So something definitely to take a look into. And the last section for this episode is going to be setting goals. We need to set goals for ourselves, and I've started with the first episode about having 3 gallons of water and 6 cans of food every time you go to the grocery store. So now, hopefully, as you're reading this, you've kind of figured out where your goals are going towards, what kind of topic matters important to you. And so I would start looking at, okay, I would like to have 72 hours worth of food and water for my family group by this date. Make it very flexible. And then about this, I want to have a week's worth of food and water by this date, and a month, and so on. And when you would like to have backup power, these are just things I'm throwing out there because, again, everybody's different about what they feel need to be prepared for and when they need to have that. Security and security items and knowledge. So those things take time, especially knowledge. But you got to remember, knowledge is so much more powerful than the gear. Gear supplements knowledge. It's not the other way around. It doesn't matter if you have the best security device or gun. If you don't have the knowledge, it's useless. Same thing with axes and anything else you could think about survival. If you do not have that knowledge base, then sadly it just will not help you. Communications, that'd be something essential also. I would look into getting your ham license. Not necessarily just to talk to people, but be able to manipulate the ham radio and pick up frequencies maybe to areas that are not affected. And by getting information, you can figure out, well, this is how long I need to ration my food. This area is not affected, but this area is. So it looks like this cloud of radiation is coming this way. So having communications is essential. One of the first things that the military does once they get into an area is they have to establish communications for reserves and oncoming forces. So if you look at what kind of the military does in a lot of things, it kind of rings true to survival attitudes. So definitely look at and set goals. By setting goals, you're actually putting into your mind that you need to do these things. And by putting a date down, it actually gives you motivation instead of just saying, yeah, I need to do 72 hours. Well, that means nothing unless you put a date to it, put a time to it, something that you're like, well, I did say this date, why am I not doing it? So it's essential to set goals. You look at anybody that's been prosperous across the board in all different sectors of life. They set goals constantly. They constantly review their goals. They're constantly changing their goals, and I strongly push you to do the same with preparations and self-reliance.